Okay, thank you so much, Samantha, for being here. It's really nice for you to come into the community. I know there's a lot of people who are massively interested in what you do. So if I can just introduce you. So you are a holistic well-being coach and you specialize in grief.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for being here. I wondered whether you could take a moment just to tell everybody how you get to do what you do, and
Mhm.
what you do and how you help others move through the grief process.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me on, first of all. It's always good to be able to, talk about, what I do and how it helps people. And if I jump straight in, so sadly, I know very well firsthand how grief is, how it affects your well-being, what sort of can happen along the process if you sort of don't work through the grief. So I've sort of seen it from both sides. So yeah, I came into coaching, I think it was about 18 months ago now. So sadly, I lost my mum when I was heavily pregnant with my second child. So it was expected. She had pancreatic cancer, so we sort of knew, but it was during the lockdowns. And my mum sort of defeated all objects, so it was very long, prolonged sort of episode with grief because she lasted 18 months longer than predicted.
Okay.
So it was a very big whirlwind. So when mum passed, it was very difficult. It was almost like we grieved all over again. And I had this newborn baby to contend with as well. So, a very, very, very tough time. And then I found myself a coach and I had some grief therapy as well. But this took a little while before I did all of these things. I sort of just survived for some time, really. And then sadly, 12 months after mum passed, we lost dad.
Oh,
So yeah, very, very difficult time. But I
yeah.
sort of realized within the grief after mum that I just wanted to help people. I've always been somebody that's very empathetic, always there for people. My previous jobs, I worked in care as a care manager, and I worked very heavily with grief, supporting the carers when they obviously lost their loved ones. And yeah, once I sort of experienced my own grief and the very lows, yeah, it just happened for me. I just realized that this is where I needed to be, how I wanted to help people. So
Yeah.
even though obviously the last couple of years have been, awful, really tough to navigate, I feel in an amazing position with my business, helping other people. Obviously, I come from, a lot of experience. So yeah, I absolutely, it sounds weird to say I absolutely love what I do, but
So
obviously
weird,
different.
isn't it? You can find, strength in adversity and find yourself going down a different career path to something that perhaps you'd never even, dreamed of doing.
Yeah,
All purely down to something that's happened, things that have happened in your life.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's amazing that you've been able to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very grateful for what I do, and also my experiences. Because without my experiences, I wouldn't be where I am today. I've learned so much, and hopefully, I help my clients along the way. So
Okay.
yeah.
So how do you work with people? What's the process? How does it sort of take place?
Yeah, so I work with well-being. So having gone through a lot of it myself, grief affects everything. It's not just obviously the emotions that we feel. It affects our health in a really big way. So how I work with my clients is I navigate them through the process. So they come to me at whatever stage, it's sort of they feel it appropriate for them, but I offer that safe space for them to open up, to talk about their grief. And what I found for me is sort of in the early stages of grief, people check in and see how you are within the first few weeks, and then it's almost like it just disappears. People don't potentially don't know how to talk about it, don't know what to ask, and it just sort of, for me especially, it just sort of was as if it never happened after a little while. And obviously
Very
that has a
tricky.
big effect. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
help people with that, with their safe space. They can bring what they like. I help them with the stages of grief. But a big part of what I do alongside that is looking after their well-being. So what they're doing for themselves along the journey, what self-care they've got in place, different practices that will help them to navigate the grief. Obviously, sleep is highly affected by it as well. So we look at all areas really, and I think the main thing is to prioritize them, because we very much prioritize other members of the family. Obviously, if you've got somebody that's left behind, for example, like my dad was, we prioritized him and then not ourselves, if that makes sense. So it's to help my clients to prioritize themselves, because in all of this, you know, we are the ones that are so important for ourselves. So that's how I help my clients. And then also, obviously, throughout grief, we don't have much joy, if any joy. It's very hard to find joy. And also purpose. You know, we lose a lot of our purpose and what we want to be doing. And so I help them with that as well towards the end. So it's almost like a step by step, you know, acknowledging and going through the process, then working on what they need to sort of cope a little easier and their well-being. And then we almost look at setting very, very small, manageable little goals to just give people something to still keep fighting for. So yeah, it works really well with my clients, and I find it so you know, so beneficial and uplifting to be able to guide them through that process, you know, because well, if I could describe grief, there's not really a great description for it, but it's different for everyone. And I just find that we get completely lost in the whole process. To even just see somebody find a little bit of joy or a little bit of, oh, I used to enjoy this, and
Yeah,
it
there's little
just
shining glimmers.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I
yeah,
see a lot of similarities in your profession and mine, in that anxiety very much we take away our self, you know, the need to look after ourselves, because although we're going through this thing, we're still running around after everybody else, and we tend to, you know, our self-care gets lost along the way. And actually, when you strip it all back, that's the thing that really matters the most. We need to take care of number one.
yeah,
So yeah, when you were
absolutely.
just saying that, I was thinking actually there's a big similarity there in terms of, you know, just putting yourself first for your recovery
Yeah,
journey. Because if you're not able to, you know, to do all these things, then it's really a difficult place to start from.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you really be able
absolutely.
to prioritize your well-being, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. And it's having that sort of space to be able to, because I know for myself and some of my clients, it's very difficult to talk to people, especially family members that are feeling the same. You know, I never wanted to open up to my siblings on how I was doing, because I was more concerned about how they was doing. So it's having that important space to be able to talk about it, because that is a lot of it, is we feel we can't talk about it. And
Yeah.
in society, you know, it's not something that is very big on talking about grief. So, you know, I really just find that space is so important for them to be able to reflect and talk about how they're feeling. And
Absolutely. It becomes like, you know, very fearful to talk about these things, because we don't want to bring anybody else down. You know, we don't want anyone else to think we know it's all we talk about or we think about. But at the same time, it's the most pressing thing that's on our mind. You know, it's with us all the time. It doesn't go away.
yeah,
So it's being able to verbalize that, isn't it? And how do you do that? How do you communicate that with people? You know, without your fears
yeah,
becoming apparent, I guess. No,
yeah.
it's amazing what you do. I think it's really great. So you're working with clients all the time, and obviously getting them some great successes out the other side of how long is your program? How long do you work with people for?
So I do offer a couple of programs. So I do offer the main one because I feel like you just need a bit more time to navigate the grief, because the grief itself, you know, it's, as you'll probably know, it doesn't have a timeline. So, you know, I can't say in 4 weeks you're going to feel better from grief, but I can say
Yeah,
in 4 weeks you'll have some better tools to help you.
absolutely.
So I do I go for the 12 week if possible. Because then, you know, we sort of break it into sections, but I do also offer 6 weeks if people are looking for something a bit quicker. And I do also just offer a one-off sort of deep dive session where we can just look at where you're at in your grief journey, what's working, possibly what's not working, and just offer some tools and techniques and just that space as well. Because I think people just get very overwhelmed at they don't know what's going to help them. And there are many things out there that could potentially help them. So I find that's quite a useful one as well, just to chat about where they're at and the options and bits like that. So, but yeah, mainly the 12 week I find is the most popular.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that you can't put a timeline on it, and some people, deal with things quicker than others. Other people's, it's obviously always with you, but in terms of making progress, that some people just take a lot longer, and it's a hard thing to timeline, isn't it?
Yeah,
So everybody's different, and I guess the most important thing, as with health anxiety, is not to put too much pressure on yourself to achieve things by a certain
yeah,
date. Never set yourself deadlines to, I
yeah,
want to be free of health anxiety in 2 months, because as soon as you do that, you're up against that hard place. You've set yourself that goal. So everybody handles things in a different way.
yeah,
But for you and the work that you do, just being able to guide people, and give them that sort of shining light to see things from a different angle, because it's a very dark, lonely place,
it
and
is.
you can just feel very on your own, with what is already a really, really sad thing to be coping with. So
Yeah,
amazing to you, amazing. And I think it's great that you can find this strength in, like I say, in adversity. So being able to help others based on the stuff that is very real to you, things that
yeah,
you're still going through, still processing yourself, because it's still
yeah.
early days. But yeah, it's a great thing to be able to help people with.
Thank you. Yeah, I do find it very rewarding, and I think something that you mentioned there is grief can be very different because obviously grief, you can grieve in all areas of your life. Obviously not just loss. But for me, the difference between the grief I experience with mum and the grief I experience with dad are completely different. Obviously they're different people, different relationships, but for me, it was the process of I had the coaching, I found the tools and techniques, and I learned what I needed to cope, and that made me cope a little bit easier with dad. Obviously, still very tough. It was very unexpected, so you had a different part of the grief with that as well, rather than the anticipation grief. But I just dealt with it, and I felt so much better with my mechanisms at that stage. So there's that as well that I help people with is, you never know when it might happen, but it's learning what we need on a day-to-day basis, because meditation and bits like that isn't for everyone, but grounding techniques might be more useful for people, or visualization, if they're feeling like they're being triggered by certain things, so there's different things for different people.
Absolutely, it's not a one size fits all
No.
thing, and we all have to deal with grief at some point in our lives. We're all going to have to, if we haven't already come across these things. So to have those tools, which are transcendable, I guess, into other aspects, like you say, you grieve different things in your life. Your kids growing older, all those things. There's always elements to grieve, but to have those tools that you can use at different parts is amazing. Okay,
Yeah,
so thank you very much for that. I've got a couple of questions, if you
yeah, yeah,
wouldn't mind,
yeah,
from the community. And also what we'll do is at the end of this, I will post your contact details
okay.
underneath. So if people want to contact you directly, if they're interested in hearing more about what you do, then
Oh,
they'll be
thank
able to
you.
do that.
Yeah.
So one of the questions that I had, was, my close friend is sadly dying, and I'm really struggling to go and see them. It's making me more anxious, and I'm feeling really bad. I don't want to go, because sadly they're passing away. What would you suggest? How can they deal with that?
First of all, just obviously, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's a really tough situation, and one that I can relate to. A different relationship, but with my mum, obviously I knew that was happening, and I found that very, very, very tough to keep going to visit her. And so yeah, I'm just truly sorry that that you're somebody's going through that at the moment. But I would say one of the main thing is to understand the feelings and know that they're okay. Anything that we feel in this process, because obviously this is grief before the grief has happened as well,
Yeah.
is acknowledge that them feelings are okay. Everything that we feel is fine, so give ourselves that sort of that due that what you are feeling is allowed. It's I don't like to use the term normal, but I think a lot of the time the feelings can feel like perhaps I shouldn't be feeling this, and perhaps I'm not allowed to feel this, if that makes sense. But they're all normal. They're all a response to what's going on. So first of all, just allow yourself that if you are feeling that way, it's okay, even though it's hard.
Yeah.
Secondly, I would say is just to make sure that you are prioritizing yourself. Because I imagine at the moment it's very much just surviving. You can't stop thinking about obviously your friend and what's to come and how difficult that is. So just making sure you prioritize yourself with your self-care or any sort of tools and techniques that help you. So getting out for a walk, I found that extremely beneficial, fresh air, just having a breath, just walking. So anything that you can do in that sense, sort of add that into your weekly routine. The more you can do of that, the better.
Yeah.
Prioritizing yourself. I would say as well, journaling would be really good. And, if you've not done journaling before, I don't mean you have to, have a big script, but, just anything, even if it's a little brain dump. Obviously, there's a lot of thoughts and feelings going on in here, which manifest and obviously come out in different ways. So
Yeah.
just journaling, how am I feeling today? What's happened? You could even, I know writing a letter I found really helpful. So obviously one of the ways is talking to your friend and just that, sort of homing in on their relationship and how special they are to you. But I appreciate that's quite difficult to do. So
Mm.
journaling in that sense would be really, really good as well. You could write down how you're feeling and how it's, what emotions are coming up for that as a way of expressing that,
Mm.
rather than keeping it in. But my main thing would say is go with how you're feeling.
Mm.
And if you do feel comfortable, talk to your friend, talk about your friendship, talk about reminisce as much as you can. And obviously going through similar experiences is within what you can cope with, make the most of that time you've got. But
Yeah.
whilst self-compassion is so important. So if one day you just feel absolutely naff and you just can't do it, then you honor that. You
Yeah.
honor that, you do
Absolutely.
stuff for you, and then hopefully the next day, but yeah, the best you can, don't beat yourself up for feeling like that, because no one wants to navigate that, and it sure as hell is the hardest thing to navigate. So you're doing
Yeah.
amazing in what you're doing right now, but I would say a few of them might help in this process, and just allow yourself that time.
Absolutely. We all put so much pressure on ourselves, don't we, to be that person, to be that
Yeah,
superwoman, superman. But actually, we're not, none of us are superhuman. And we have to, there comes a point where if we have a day where we just feel like we can't do it, then we can't do it. And like you
yeah,
say, you park that day and hope that the next day is better.
yeah,
So yeah, self-compassion, I really do get that. Yeah, thank you for that, Samantha. That's a really lovely answer. Thank you. And the next question, can grief be linked to health anxiety? So sadly, this person has experienced a certain problem that's happened. Their father passed away of a
mhm,
certain thing, and now they're worried that they're going to get this thing. So it's created an anxiety loop based on an experience that they've sadly gone through.
yeah,
So can grief be linked to
yeah.
health anxiety?
Yeah, definitely, because whatever you've gone through with the grief is obviously very traumatic. It's very triggering. It's obviously very emotional, and depending on the circumstances, absolutely. So I'll give an example. It's not necessarily me, but my dad died of a sudden heart attack, and my sister now has got really severe health anxiety, and she has been in hospital a couple of times and had every test under the sun, because she's convinced that her heart is now, she's having the palpitations, and
Yeah,
she does already have a minor heart sort of malfunction, but
yeah,
every time she's been to the hospital, they have said to her it's anxiety. It takes so much out of us. Grief is, I've mentioned earlier on, it's not spoke about enough. The effects it has on our health is unbelievable.
yeah.
So I would 100% say everything you're feeling is, again, it's acceptable, it's allowed. My sort of suggestion would be to work with the anxiety itself, which obviously you would help with, is work with the managing the symptoms of that anxiety.
Yeah,
And then also the grief is playing a huge part in that. Obviously, what happened throughout that particular loss, that grief is playing a huge part. So just managing the grief symptoms where you can, sort of putting in place any tools to help with that. Again, a letter would be really, really quite helpful depending on the loss, so you can sort of, if there's anything that you didn't get to say to that person. And but yeah, I would definitely say it can be linked. I've,
yeah,
similar in the family, similar experiences for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
So again, it's
absolutely.
doing what you can to cope with that, even if it does mean going to the doctors and chatting through what's happened. how you're feeling. You can do tests, can't they, within reason, and put
Absolutely.
your
Yeah.
mind at ease. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would say very, very viable feelings. And I'm surprised I haven't had similar with the loss of my dad, I think because of different work that I've done. But I do feel that, I probably would have had that as well.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I see this an awful lot. So, it is very, very plausible for your body to create symptoms based on what you know.
Yeah,
So if you've experienced grief because somebody has passed away of a heart attack, your fallback, your default setting is always going to be the heart problems. That's the thing that you're going to go straight to,
yeah,
because that's the thing you're closest to. So what will happen is you'll have heart palpitations because you're anxious, and
yeah,
therefore, when you do get those, then you'll start to worry that there's something more sinister. And why wouldn't you? Because that is an awful thing to have gone through. So it's going to be your
yeah,
default place to
yeah,
go. So yeah,
yeah.
from my point of view, they are massively, intrinsically linked together.
Yeah.
Um,
If I can just add something there as well, what I help my clients with, obviously, with depending on the grief experience and what's happened, you do get a lot of triggering experiences from what's happened. So I work with my clients specifically with the triggers. So if the health anxiety is being caused by a certain trigger within that grief, it would be to work with that trigger and obviously the symptoms of what's coming up for that, alongside with the anxiety, because that might just help manage them feelings a little bit more as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Always important to go back to the trigger. Your triggers are, if we can get to the root of it, that's where we're halfway there. Often we don't know what the triggers are, or they're not very obvious. But as soon as you can start to unravel those and work out, why these things are happening, then it's so much easier to solve. Once we know, often it's not so glaring. Often it can be accumulation of things that have happened. But if it's something this specific like this, it's really easy to work out that is the thing that's causing
Yeah,
you to feel that way.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just it's very cliche, but I would say take every day as it comes, everything that you're feeling, and allow that, but don't let it take over. So if obviously the health anxiety is starting to take over, then obviously look to the root cause of that, which it's probably the grief and whatever else is coming up. So just work through that, but just always acknowledge how far you've already come. Even though you've got all these struggles that are really hard, I just find it so important to acknowledge how bloody amazing we all are, that you're
Yeah,
even in these groups, you're even talking, even asking questions is really hard with something so difficult. So
absolutely. Yeah,
acknowledging everybody for that as well.
100%, 100%. They're doing all the right things just to be here. And
Yeah,
talking is really good. Sharing your experiences, listening to
yeah,
other people, all really, really helps. So yeah, it's not like we're burying our head in the sand, but by being here, by doing these things is massively helpful. So
yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
so much. Thank you. It's been really
It's
lovely to chat with
okay.
you. I'll pop your details. Do you have a group, or how can people get in
I
touch with you?
do. Yeah, so I have a specific grief group, so it's called From Grief to Growth. And that's where we work through, it's a support sort of area for people. So we work through whatever people are, sort of experience at that time. But then I help them to look towards, like I mentioned before, finding joy still within the sorrow and setting small goals, and sort of that sort of side that we can still have a life around the grief, but it is very much what people bring to the support group. So yeah, From Grief to Growth is my
Nice.
Facebook group,
I like the name.
and Samantha Louise is my sort of my coaching page, that you can find me on as well. But yeah, the Grief to Growth group, there's trainings and bits that happen in there, and it is specific for grief. So
Fantastic. Okay, well, I will add those links as well to the comments below. But thank you so much for joining me, Samantha. It's been really lovely to chat to you, and I do wish you all the best.
thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.